So a very big welcome to everyone, and it's so lovely that you've taken this time to join us, and as I say, from all around the world, and for each of us to really send to everybody a gratitude that you're there. It's amazing, and every one of us is, contributes to this amazing group equally important, equal value, all of us together contributing to this network of energy that we are now creating all around the world. So thank you, each and every one of you, for being here. So what I realized when I was kind of thinking about what I'd talk about in the talk part, I realized that actually I could probably add enough information and enough stuff that I wanted to say that I could talk. I could set off talking now and still be talking next week. So that much information. I've actually been aware of the information, the backdrop, the backstory, and all of the stuff that is has led up to where we are now. I've actually known about many aspects of this for virtually 30 years. So I've looked at many angles of it, and nothing has been, the gift to me is that not much of it has been a sudden big shock. But I think for many, a lot of the things that's going on today have been a shock and a sudden wake-up call, or just feeling confused, perplexed, frightened, etc. So just to accept that we're all coming from different places, different experiences, different backgrounds, different times. I mean, if I say I've been connected to this for 30 years, that's before some of you were born. So, I mean, obviously we're all coming from different places. And I think today I want to emphasize and cover the Angelic Reiki aspect of it. Because there's just so much information. Now, what I'm actually doing in terms of information is I'm putting a special page on the website where you can find links to, I think, all the main people, sites, YouTube's, websites, personalities that can give you a lot of background information. There is so much information that it's actually impossible for me to talk about all of it, but we will talk about certain parts, especially when we come to the questions. So yeah, just as I'm saying, just to acknowledge that we're all coming from very different places for this. So some of you will be familiar with some of the things that I'm going to say. Some of you won't. So just to point out that a number of things have come together to make now a very particular time. So the things that have come together is the winter, or for us anyway in the north, the winter solstice on the 21st, and you may well have, most of you will have actually been with us for that meditation. And that not only was that the winter solstice, it was also the total moving into the age of Aquarius. It was also the Aborigines' activation of a gift from the Palladian race that has been kept under Uluru, their sacred rock in the middle of Australia. And the activation of that was, in their tradition, a very significant thing, and in fact an essential thing for the human race to move forwards. So that happened not just before Christmas. We've also got a very particular astrological alignment for next year with Jupiter and Saturn coming together, which hasn't happened in this way for a very long time. Also, something that not many people are talking about, but Kevin and I actually talked about this, back in the early, 2004, 2005, we were introducing our classes, especially the Merkaba and Shambhala class, well, it was just those two classes, to another phenomenon, and that is the energy that is coming from our galactic center. So this is, in essence, this is light. And light can actually be described in a number of different ways, but it's generally, this kind of light is usually described as photons. And there is a band of light coming from our galactic center, coming through the constellation of the Pleiades and bathing our solar system in this light. This is something that happens every 13,500 years and will last for 2,000 years. Now, when light, photons, light, whatever, particles or waves, when light touches anything, it speeds up the vibration. So we can have the, we know that time feels to speed up and etc. But I think one of the gifts, and important things of Angelic Reiki and the second ray, which is love and wisdom, is to have the wisdom, to have the knowledge. So it's not just vague ideas, we can actually ground it with background information that we have. This, it's an actual phenomena. And this is part of what 2012 was about. That was when we first totally moved into this photon band. Now, one of the effects of these photons is that it affects the physical body. And this light actually creates an increased spin in our body, in the cells, in everything in our body. There is a greater movement, that it's scintillated and it's vibrated. Now, this means that we cannot hold on to the heavy emotions that we hold in our physical bodies. So that is another phenomena that is happening at the moment that we need to embrace and we need to appreciate. The amount of information that is out there, as I say, is tremendous, and I think we're all very aware that that there's a very significant time between Wednesday and I don't know what day it is, but these 20 up to the 20th of January in the United States, in terms of who will be the president and everything that is coming to the surface there. So with the COVID situation, with the rules that governments are making, with the astrological stuff, etc., we are in a melting pot. Everything, every aspect of our lives is being affected and pressured in some kind of way. Now, I can talk about what's a virus like? Is there a virus? Is there not a virus? Is there are masks good? Are they not good? What's actually happened? Should it be Biden? Should it be Trump, etc., etc.? But one of the things I want to communicate that is that really the question. One of the things that really woke me up to looking at all of this from a different perspective, this East energy that we called in, this higher perspective, was when I realized that the planets, the astrological alignment, the energy that was here on this earth in March and April of this year, and for longer than that actually, but the astrological energy was, I need to stay at home. I am frightened of something dangerous out there. So was that my stuff? Was it connected to China? Was it connected to a virus? Was it connected to the government and wrong political decisions? Was it bad science? No. Well, yes, but also no. There is here very much a bigger picture. It's not just about our, in a way, our government, the political decisions, our culture, how are the laws that are being brought in and the restrictions that we're experiencing and the turmoil that's happening, the riots that are happening and have happened, in a way, are just the detail of us living and acting out something bigger. So this is a massive invitation to not take it personally, and an invitation to not point fingers. I think it was in the September Abraxas newsletter, that a picture with all the fingers pointing, and was so good at saying, oh, it's Trump, oh, it's Biden, oh, it's etc., etc. It's China, but is it? In Angelic Reiki, we receive the attunements to the galactic vibration. We live in a galaxy. We are galactic beings. So I hope this perspective, my intention of this perspective is to allow you to, the invitation is to relax and go, hey, this is how it is. And perhaps it is nobody's fault. Because making it somebody's fault, having a judgment and an opinion and criticizing and discussing and arguing and all of this it detracts from the bigger picture, and it's just heavy energy that we're having to sift through all day. So if you listen to alternative news media, if you listen to mainstream media, whatever, then we don't even have to worry. Does the mainstream media tell us the truth or not? There's a bigger picture. So I really invite you to let go of opinions, criticism, and blame here down on 3D. Because the ultimate thing is, our invitation is to hold all of this in the Angelic Reiki space, in that space of unconditional love. So that's the easy part. That's the place where we can say, and this is not personal. There is a bigger picture. But the flip side of that is that it actually is very, very personal, because how we respond to the daily experience is our responsibility. And I said this right back in, I think it was April, when I first started doing the talks on the Facebook. The very first thing of saying, this is an invitation to personal responsibility. So to look at Angelic Reiki, an Angelic Reiki healing, whether it's a self healing or whether it's a healing, just calling in the energy for ourselves, or whether it's a healing you're doing for someone else. The bottom line of an attunement, the bottom line is that a healing is a invitation to reconnect to your soul self. Forget anything else. That is the first law of healing. In the 1 and 2 manual, it says in the first law, all disease is disconnection from soul self. So all healing is reconnection to soul self. Now, we can have a sense that soul self is something really good. It's very spiritual, and how do I know when I'm in touch with soul self and all the rest of it? I think one of the helpful things to do is to bring the idea of soul self, the definition that Alice Bailey had, and the whole of that time, and Madame Blavatsky. Soul self is higher mind. Everybody on this earth is in touch and using it sometime. It's not something that's difficult. It's not something out of reach. It's not something mega spiritual and perfect and all the rest of it. It's that wise you, that's sensible, intuitive, the bright idea. That is the soul self communicating. And the invitation now, and the great gift of Angelic Reiki, is to live from the soul self, not the personality self. So what does this mean? And how do we do it? And this is really important, and I really want to make it very practical, really, really try and connect you to a very practical way of understanding it, because there is so much information out there which is just cliched words. What does it mean? Live from the heart. Okay, how? What does it mean? It's just words, ungrounded, said 1,000 times, and ends up meaning absolutely nothing. But actually, living from soul self, living from higher mind, higher wisdom, is exactly the same thing. So I'll give you an example. Christmas Eve. So there's all the energy of which I really found quite challenging, the energy of the winter solstice. And it really, this energy is really coming in. It's a bright light. Now, is a bright light good? Or is it, we always say, oh, I send you love and light. What is this light? And what is it to have a bright light? As a perfect Chinese saying that tells us the truth, the brightest light creates the darkest shadow. Okay. So when all this light, when all this energy comes in, it shines on our shadow. So that you were before you were born, before you were before your parents were born, okay, was born. However old you are, that's how many years ago that was born. And when it was born, it developed a way of coping in this world as a response to its experiences, response to other adults, other children, media, friends at school, getting into trouble for doing this, all the influences that affect a young child. And all adults we're living from non-perfect childhoods, so we all have our stuff. And I want to actually just interject something here. and just bring another factor in. All of humanity, no, I'll start it in a different way. A very valuable thing to do is to study the history, the true history of humans. And in the links and in the names that I've put, that it might not be up straight away, but it'll be up in the very next few days, this link on the website. It's under links, and then there's Christine's favorites, and it'll be there. Links to people who have researched the real history of us humans. It's amazing, it's complicated, it's and it's long. Now, we know in every tradition, whether it's the Bible, whether it's the Bhagavad Gita, or whatever tradition that has a book of ancient wisdom, that there is a record of a flood. This was a major catastrophe. Imagine if you, wherever you are sat now, imagine that actually the houses across the road, the block of flats across the road, the cars, that they were thrown up in the air. The temperature rose to, you could hardly breathe. There was smoke in the air. You were choking. The mountains were moving. The sea was coming in. Everything was just utter chaos. And most people were just killed. That is a major trauma. And I agree with other people that have said this, that all of us are suffering from post-traumatic stress. It's in our DNA. It's in our cells. It's passed down generation to generation. And this is why creating fear in us is so easy. So whoever is reacting to the situation that we're living in now, those that are being angry, those that are drinking too much, those that are committing suicide, those that are becoming violent, etc. Everybody deserves compassion, because we are living out of this deep post-traumatic stress. And the only answer is connection to the soul. That was not damaged. That was not traumatized. But the memory of that trauma is in our very DNA. It's in our cells. And it's only the soul self that was not traumatized, because that was connected more dynamically to the divine that you are, that you were before your parents were born. Now, I hear mostly I think every time it's been a man, sorry guys, that has said, now what we've got to do now is let go of fear. That is the most ridiculous thing to say. It's cruel, because I am pretty sure that everybody hears that, thinks, I should let go of fear. And then something happens and they're afraid. Of course we're afraid. So what do we do? So going back to the story that I was saying, so the winter solstice and that all of that time, and still now, that energy, that light, all of this is it's bringing up everything that is in our body memory. So much of our childhood trauma, especially when you're older like myself, it's not in your mind, it's not in your conscious, everyday emotions. It's in the cells, and it's in the subconscious. But this energy that's coming in now is awakening it. So I went for a meal on Christmas Eve to my son. So my son lives in in Glasgow. I live outside of Glasgow. I'm about 35 minutes out of Glasgow. But my son is in Glasgow, and I went there for Christmas Eve. And there's my son and his partner and my little granddaughter, Freya. So I'd been walking in the park with Freya, and she'd had a sleep and we'd had a play. And my son and his partner, I was going to meet them back at the flat, and we're going to have a meal together. Anyway, so I ring up and say, I'm bringing Freya back now. And they said, oh, we're not in. We've just popped out. And that triggered in me being let down, abandoned, family not being there, left responsible, disappointment. All of that was there for me. And I could have responded like the hurt 5-year-old. I wanted to say to my son on the phone, but you promised me, and I want you to be there, and it's Christmas Eve, and you've let me down. Okay, that is what was there. So the first thing we have to do is to realize that it's not me. That was not me. That was the little girl me. When in my childhood, most of the time, there was danger. There was no security. There was danger there all the time. I don't know how many of you listen to Gabor Mate, and he has a saying, when something like that happens, he has a saying, so who's talking now? Who's there now? He talks about coming, he'd been away on a lecture, coming home. His wife was going to pick him up at the airport. He rings her and she says, oh, I'm in the middle of a painting. Can you come home on your own? And what happens is he goes, no, I want you to pick me up. Well, actually, what he was doing was, mummy, you've let me down. It was 4-year-old Gabby, not the adult. That happens for all of us. So we have a choice. Do you want to? So I could have thought, Christine, how stupid. You're acting like a child. You've got to just, but I was crying. It was real. So first of all, we recognize that this is the energy that's touching our body and our cells. And it's bringing up the trauma that was there from our childhood. And the emotion can be so strong and so intense that we totally identify with it. And we think, I thought I was actually really abandoned. I wasn't, but I responded as if I wasn't. It was like a truth to me. So first thing is to recognize that it is the cellular memory that's coming up. It's not happening to you now. And then to welcome that this is where the soul self, the higher self, the wise self, the unconditional love self takes over and doesn't get rid of the abandonment. Oh, Christine, you shouldn't be feeling abandoned. Doesn't dismiss the fear of being alone, fear of not being able to cope. But the higher soul self, its job, and our adult job, our job as a master of our life, is to just hold that hurt child with that love. If we push away a pain, it will just create disease. That's what disease is. It is an emotional pain that gets locked in cellular memory so that the cell can't work properly. And the biggest result is an autoimmune disease, cancer, etc., etc. So if you feel afraid, then bless you. You bless you. You're not being stupid. You're not being weak. You're not being a failure. And if you suppress that fear, it will just cause disease and it'll just come back again. But if we ask a good question, is, so if something particular comes up, is to say, okay, what does this remind me of? When did I last feel like this? And when you ask those questions, you keep asking that question and get used to asking that question. You will get very particular memories from your childhood. And you go, oh, yes, that's when yes, I remember being frightened when I was on holiday and I was playing on the beach and I suddenly couldn't see my parents and I didn't know where I was and I was really frightened. Very sensible child. And that fear is in ourselves. So our job is to parent, hold, listen to, recognize, meet, and love that hurt part of us. Push it away and it'll just come back and bite you in one way or another. Now, the gift, lots of people say that when they're doing Angelic Reiki self-healing, they don't feel as much. It's not about seeing, not necessarily about feeling lots of energy or seeing colors or whatever. My experience is that if there's emotion there and I don't know what it's about and I'm caught up in it and I can't see my way out, do, quick dedication, ask for the most perfect energy, do self-healing for however long I feel. And you can do it sat at traffic lights. You can, in a car just for a couple of minutes. It doesn't have to be a big thing, but just do some self-healing. And then what I experienced happens is I'll be caught up in this emotion, I do some self-healing, and then I go, oh, yes. Yes, that's that emotion that I'm feeling. It's actually connected to this. And the spell of the emotion goes. That connection to my soul self, that wise self, that higher mind self, the one that could see the bigger picture, then takes over. And we're not caught up in the child emotion, and we're not acting out of that past hurt self. And that is the gift of Angelic Reiki, that connection to the soul self. That's its point. And that is the gift that we have. So without expectation and without, looking for bells and whistles, lights and messages, colors and voices and energy and all the rest of it, just do that self-healing and just then be open to that higher, that soul self, that wise part of you, that higher mind self, to come in, show you what you're getting involved with and what you get, what emotional journey you're going on, what's the hook. Because every emotional response has a cause and a hook in you before you were 7. They were all set before you were 7. In all sorts of different ways and different shades. Every emotional hook that you experience, whatever it might be, loneliness because you've not spoken to anyone because you've been in lockdown, etc., etc., fear because you don't know what's going on. The actual hook for that was an experience. You're actually feeling something that happened to you before you were 7. And that child before 7 deserves your compassion, understanding, care, love, attention. Now, when we do that for ourselves, we can do it for others. And all this world needs, as I say, it doesn't matter. I just made a list of stuff. It doesn't matter. And I mean, I know so much about viruses, etc., and masks and wearing them and common law, and as I say, I can talk for the next week. But actually, none of it matters. In a way, I mean, it does matter, but in a way, it doesn't. If we can have this unconditional love for ourselves and live in the world without judgment, with compassion, with kindness and acceptance, then that is the world that will be there. And we can do that when we're connected to that higher soul self. And that's the purpose of Angelic Reiki. And the attunements are done at the time of Lemuria. And when you were a human at the time of Lemuria, you totally lived from your soul self. So that's our invitation. This is the tool that we've got. And it's interesting, I was just reflecting on things before we all got together. And one of the things that I just kind of saw was that what we teach in Angelic Reiki has actually always been ahead of the game. So know you've got the tools. And it isn't about necessarily trying to convert and educate other people, but when you live with kindness, discernment, compassion, non-judgment, then that's a model for everybody, and also putting that energy out there. The other thing is that one hears is we've got to increase our vibration. So I've always got to be happy, and I've got to, yes, this increase my vibration thing. The only way to increase your vibration is to be in truth, connect to that younger pain and hold it in love. If one thinks you can increase your vibration by being happy, then that's false happiness. It's pretense, because underneath it is the pain. So we've got lots of tools. And, but so please don't try and be good. Be in your truth and have compassion for whatever truth is there. Have compassion for it. Because actually, all of us, there's nothing actually wrong with anybody. We've just got memories coming back that don't belong, but they're held in the cells. But actually, we don't need to heal anything, because there's nothing wrong with anybody. All we need to do is connect to that higher soul self. Okay.